Howdy, folks. Welcome back to NiteBites, our inaugural show. I'm your host, Clark Guerin.
And I'm your co-host, Denise Oliver.
And before we took our break, we were talking about Barack and affirmative action.
Yeah.
And, maybe you don't remember this time, but I remember a time when a black man wouldn't get a job, no matter how much better he was than the white boy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was a big deal about Ralph Bunche. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Yes.
Won a Nobel Prize, and they basically, I forget whether they excluded him from housing or a restaurant or something, and I remember somebody commented, well, what the hell, if we let him in, all of a sudden, the place is going to be overrun with Nobel Prize winners. But there was a time when if you were black, it didn't matter how good you were.
Right.
And you probably don't remember that, do you?
No, I don't. But I can understand that. I can understand that there was a time when black was the only issue. Yeah.
And Barack, I think, proves that if you excel, race doesn't matter. My mother loves to listen to him, and what she says is, when I'm listening to him, I forget that he's black. Now, as somebody who's black, what do you think about that statement? Is that racist?
Yes.
Why?
Bless your little mama's heart.
Why is that a racist statement?
Because what does a black person sound like?
Well, mostly they don't sound like him, and truthfully, most white people don't sound like him either.
Well, then there you go. So what is when she closes her eyes and doesn't look at him, what, she thinks he's green or something?
Well, no, but there are an awful lot of black people, unfortunately, who grow to fame. Unfortunately, many of them athletes.
Yes, well.
Who cannot talk above a third grade reading level.
Sure, and I'm sure as much as Barack Obama loves to play basketball, he can't dunk.
Yeah, well, okay.
Okay.
I mean, a perfect example of that was, to take a name out of the past, Hall of Shame maybe, was O.J. Simpson.
Oh,
and while he has
Hmm.
since got some notoriety for things he did later in life, I remember him when he was a football star at the University of Southern California.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was really amazing about him is when he talked, once again, you couldn't tell that he was black. He spoke perfect English. He didn't speak it with a Ebonics accent or anything else. If you were listening to him, you didn't know the man was black.
Ebonics.
Well, whatever it is. And you can call it racial. I remember I had a guy who worked for me, and he was a huge, great-looking black man. And most people were afraid of him because he was so big and so powerful looking, but he's a very gentle man. And he didn't particularly have a lot of education, but when you heard him speak, you couldn't tell he was black.
Wow.
And I asked him about that. And this is back probably before, in an age of time before your memory, in the late 60s. He said, hey, look, I know that if I want to get ahead, I gotta talk like the dominant culture. I need certain manners in my conversation to make it through. If I want to be accepted, I don't dress like I'm going to the ghetto, and I don't talk like I'm going to the ghetto.
Okay.
So why, and you classify that as being racist. Why?
No.
You just told me my mom was racist when she says that. Now why?
Because from his point of view, he was playing to the attitude that your mom has. So he was getting over. He was trying to get over.
But why is that a racial attitude? She would have the same attitude for a white person who didn't know how to talk, or a Mexican person who didn't know how to talk.
So wait a minute. So stop.
Or a Chinese person.
So if she listened to a white person that didn't know how to talk, she would say, when I listen to them talk, I can't tell that they're white.
No, she would say when they listen to them talk, I can't tell what the hell they're saying.
Okay, well then that's probably what you should say about black people who perhaps don't enunciate clearly. I can't understand what the hell they're saying.
Well,
not that they're black or that I don't know that they're black, because many black people do enunciate fairly clearly.
Yeah, like yourself. But I just don't know that. See, where I take issue with you is you put a racial tag on it. I don't think it's racial.
Okay, perhaps it's just ignorance. And you know what? And that's fine, because
Thanks a lot.
ignorance is not stupidity. Ignorance is something that you can be taught to think differently. And if you just don't, it's just a lack of knowledge. So perhaps I should talk to your mom a little more for you. How about that?
Well, but let's go back to the point. You think that's racial, but I think that it is a compliment to Barack.
Why?
Because he talks, he communicates the way we expect people in the dominant culture to communicate.
Well, I'm sorry, Clark, but I know a lot of black people, and they all communicate effectively as well. So, again, I think that we're going by stereotypes. And stereotypes, of course, have a basis in a few factual events.
They're based on facts. It doesn't mean everybody's part of it, but some people.
They're based on facts and blown out of proportion to enable them to become stereotypes or caricatures. But to say that he doesn't sound black is an insult, because what does sounding black sound like? You know, there is no such thing as sounding black.
Well, that's not exactly true. There are certain speech patterns that people do that sound black, and you know it, and I know it.
Like
Just
what?
like there are certain speech patterns that sound Indian. Indians, not American Indians. There are certain speech patterns that sound Hispanic. I mean,
say he doesn't. I mean, I've never heard Barack Obama say "gee willikers" or anything. It's not like he's trying to sound white. He's just talking.
Is that white? Gee willikers?
Gee willikers.
I never knew that was white.
Come on. He's just talking normally. I mean, he's communicating. And as an educated person should. An educated person should be able to communicate effectively.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so to say that he doesn't sound black, come on. I mean, he sounds like whatever he is, which is an educated person, a Harvard Law educated man who was editor of the Harvard Law Review, right?
Yeah, elected to that.
Correct.
By a lot of white people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously he can communicate effectively, right?
Yeah. He does a great job of that. A lot better than the white guy who left. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. So please stay with us.